Got it. Which one do I?
There you go. Hi, everybody. It's Andra Annette, that crazy lady. She's back. And with me today, I have Melanie Douglas, who I'm very fond of. She helps women. She's a life consultant. She's a single mom, and she really helps women step into their purpose and really stop people pleasing and just be who they are. And I think that's an amazing quality to have. And if you can teach that, then that's really amazing. So here's Melanie. Hi, Melanie. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about your work. I mean, because that's not an easy task to really help women really step into their purpose. So can you explain that a little bit to me?
I always like to say that it kind of found me because I kind of grew up like around a lot of people that were women that were kind of natural people pleasers, I think. And I was kind of the opposite. So it was not something that was really, I think, encouraged as I was growing up. And it was kind of like viewed as being too defiant or something that sort of needed to be sort of maybe stamped out of the person a little bit. But I think that over time, I realized that that quality that people were trying to get rid of was one of my biggest assets. It just needed to be kind of tweaked a little bit because I had a lot of like wounds and stuff like that. And that makes you too defiant almost. So once I started healing and kind of going on a healing journey to kind of deal with different traumas in my past, it kind of got more balanced. And I thought, well, I seen on social media all the time, like people expressing how much of a problem it was to be, a people pleaser, or how they derailed half their life doing it. And I just over time, I thought, well, there seems to be a big market for this. If I could figure out ways to sort of effectively teach people to sort of not go down that path or retrieve parts of their life. And so when I was kind of blew up my life 4 years ago to come up here and do a degree, I kind of stumbled upon life coaching and things like that when I was in the social work department. And I thought, well, do I want to be go into counseling or life coaching? And I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll do like a life coach certification on the side with the degree. And that's sort of where I am now. I just got certified and trying to put together like a way to help people, like different packages and things like that, because I'm also I'm passionate about helping people overcome social anxiety and several other sort of subsets of of that as well. So different
A lot,
topics.
there's so many people that are really suffering from anxiety. So
Yeah,
you would never run out of work, Melanie. Really, really.
that's what
And
I've been told. Yeah,
yeah, depression and anxiety are almost always diagnosed together. 50% of people that are diagnosed with depression suffer from social anxiety as well. So
yeah. And that was my
interesting.
story for a long time, and it's surreal to think that, I'd say 25 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, that I had trouble like walking past someone on the street because I was so phobic. Like I want to cross the street. And of course that makes you look weirder because someone's coming at you and then you're like, they cross the street and they're like, why are you avoiding me? And it's just like, it's the brain just sort of says, I'm unsafe right now. I'm unsafe. I'm unsafe. And I have to cross the street to be safe. And it occurred to me just with all the research I was doing and the life coach training that nobody's born with SA, right? It always has a root. And there's always like a series of traumas, or maybe one big trauma or a little t trauma that happens. And then the person sort of slowly goes into that mode of being where their brain is telling them that the outside world is unsafe or authority figures are safe or whatever. So I thought, well, maybe, like along with the people pleasing, I can also sort of help people sort of discover what the root of the anxiety is and sort of untangle the root from there. So there is a couple of avenues that I like to go down when I help people too. So yeah, that's another one.
But sometimes people really don't even know the root, and it takes some time and some
Mm-hmm.
painstaking work to
Yeah.
really get there. I was
Yeah.
one of those people like yourself that is just defiant by nature. And they tried to stamp it out of me, but I didn't let them. But you know
I
what?
really enjoyed your chapter. I found it very inspiring, and I have so many like medical questions I could ask you too, just because I was misdiagnosed for a while too with dysautonomia, and I found that really interesting, your journey. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I enjoyed all the chapters, yours as well. I did read them. I read all of Hannah's books, believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting a little behind because I have more pressure on me with a new position, but
Yeah.
so that and you know, just working your own business, sometimes you can't read as much as you like, but I got to
Yeah.
get back to that because I love escaping to a book, and she's got some great books. But you
Mhm.
know, you were talking about crossing the street.
Mhm.
So I found when I was growing up that I could not tolerate crowds. So
Mm.
I was one to, you know, like some people aren't comfortable alone, Melanie. I was
Yeah.
one of those people that could spend hours alone and find
Yeah. Same
millions
here.
of things to do. But
Yeah.
you know, and I could, you know, like I had my own crowd of friends, but I didn't, you know, like I live in New York my whole life. And, you know, my sister too, and she works in New York and she had no problem, you know, walking around New York. I
Yeah.
found it very overwhelming that everybody was bumping into you and like just being in the middle of that. It was very uncomfortable for me, you know?
Stimulation overload. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
that. I need a little bit of calm around me. I don't like
Yeah.
anything that's like that. And unfortunately, like my job is very high stress and always moving, and that doesn't bother me. But
That's interesting.
crowd,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really,
I
you know,
think I'm almost the opposite. It's like I've had only one job that I was actually fired from, and that was when I was put on cash at a fast food restaurant years ago. And there was like a long lineup of people, you know, and there was all of these bells going off and all of these things. And I was like, I couldn't maneuver in that present tense, high stress situation. But if I was like just meandering through a crowd and I didn't have any responsibility, it probably wouldn't bother me. So I'm actually the opposite. It's interesting.
yeah, wow.
Yeah.
No,
Like I
I
could go
don't
to a
meander.
concert
I
and
always have a destination.
yeah,
And interestingly enough, like if I am walking and it's very crowded and people are all stopping short, that gets me a little perturbed because I just want to,
yeah,
and
you
it's
want to get
nothing
there.
they're doing. I just want to get
Yeah,
out of that situation because
yeah.
it's bothersome to me. So you're also a single mom.
Hmm.
And you know, you know, we're talking about being an entrepreneur and starting our own business and, you know, and things like that. And I know that's difficult, but I
Hmm.
just, you know, I was talking with someone earlier, and we were talking about how much women are really capable of and how
Yeah,
they're very undermined in business and their
yeah,
capabilities, and they run households and companies and so much more, and you know, raise the children of America. So what's it like trying to run a business, being a single mom, and really trying to live your dreams? How do you work that and balance that together?
historically it was very difficult because I usually refer to it as like a partial remission from dysautonomia, but now I think it's probably more like a 75% remission. But at one point, like I was quite ill, and the way the laws were uh, several years ago, like I'm in Canada, so I'm in Ontario, there was this government that was in, and we could not apply for like disability unless we went after the father for support, even if we didn't see him for a decade or he was abusive or all of these things. And I was going around telling people, I think that's a human rights violation or violates the charter or something like that. And a lot of people actually wouldn't even believe it was a real law. I said, well, all you need to do is call social services. They'll tell you in 5 minutes that it's a law, because they were saying, well, you shouldn't have to move back home to your, you know, with your parents for a while because you can go on this and you're, you know, you want to cling to your parents and things like that. So I went through a lot of flack, either from people that said, you should get married very quickly so you're not a single mom, or you should go on this thing. And I felt that it was very safe to go, or unsafe to go after an ex I hadn't seen in over a decade. So when I was more ill and not able to work and support myself and not go on disability, it was very difficult before the law actually changed. So when that government went out of power, one of the first things the new government did was they struck down that law. So women were able to go on supports and things that were single parents without going after these people that they felt were a threat to them. So I was able to, sort of get on my feet, move out, and do these things, and eventually start working again. And the conditions sort of went into more of a spontaneous remission, I would say. When I was diagnosed, I was told, there's a 50-50 chance of it doing that, or you could have it for the rest of your life quite severely, and there's no way to predict it. So it's been difficult being a single parent because of that. And that's why I basically lived under the poverty line for so long until, and even now that I'm graduating, I'm still trying to get up to, to the middle class or whatever, and sort of get those things going. So it's been quite challenging, but thankfully I've risen above a lot of it now. So
Well, I mean, it hasn't
yeah.
been an easy road. And did you say you worked with social services? Did I hear you say that?
Well, I would try to get somebody to just let me get on some kind of assistance prior to this law being struck down, and nobody would budge with it, right? But it was a lot of advocacy from a lot of people through the years. And then when that regime went out and another one came in, they said, well, we got to strike this down because it was being correlated with, people getting stalked, kidnappings, all of these things, like women ending up in the ER from being, stalked or beaten up by their exes or whatever. And it was correlated to all of that. And I was saying that for years, but nobody would listen to me. So I was really happy when we were finally able to get help and that was struck down. So it was, I mean, when you're chronically ill, you don't want to be turned away because somebody's saying, well, we don't really care how sick you are, because if you don't go after somebody or go to court for like months to chase them down, you're not going to see any funding from us. So it was really, when you're already sick, it just makes it worse, right? So it was stressful.
And when you're sick, you're contending with the illness. That just adds insult to injury. So
And
I'm
my mom,
glad that.
yeah, my mom has this long history too of mental illness too. So it was not fun to have to be forced to move back in that, because she was very unstable, right? Like the last place I wanted to be was in that. I wanted to have my own housing. So of course that it was kind of like both situations were not helping me. So it was, in my opinion, it was just that this miracle of God that I even went into remission under that kind of stress, because it doesn't even make any sense that I would, right? So I think even that told me I had some kind of bigger purpose. So there was, to me, that was like a supernatural thing, because there was so much stress. I should have gotten sicker, not better, almost. But yeah,
Sometimes God gives us what we need just when we need it. How long have you been in
exactly.
remission?
I would say since about 2013, so it's been quite a while now. There are times when I definitely flare up and don't feel well, but I feel like over time they get actually less and less. So it's actually improved even since then, over time. So it's been an interesting journey for sure. Yeah.
And it hasn't been an easy one. So I think that you've been through enough situations where you're going to really be a great advocate for women as well, because the situations that you were in with your health and the process, and people really trying to get you to do things that really weren't aligned with you,
Hmm.
to get basic help that you were really should be entitled to, you
And
know?
the thing, yeah, and the thing that always kind of makes me scared is that if I would have been a people pleaser, I don't know where my life would have been, because I probably would have, kind of bowed to that pressure of, oh, well, I'll go to court, I'll track down somebody that did have a history of stalking and things like that, that I won't get into. And I just felt that it wasn't the best. But I think that's the thing that really gets me, is I think about things in my own life, whether it was pressure to marry someone I didn't feel like I was supposed to marry, or pressure to succumb to that law, or not even try to go to school again up here, or things like that. That's the thing that really gets me about all this wasted potential that people could have, because they're so afraid of displeasing somebody else, and then you don't step into your own purpose. And I just think that's a very tragic thing when I hear stories from middle-aged people or older that say, I wasted, or I derailed half my life and I wish I could get it back for other people. And if I can help prevent somebody younger from doing that, I mean, I think that's something that I'm really passionate about doing, right? So, because I've
You
seen it in
know,
my own life.
but I think there's a lot of people today, well, just, over the course of my lifetime, I think there's a lot of people that let fear really stand in their way, or,
Yeah,
even not just people pleasing, but not really honing in and practicing
fear of the unknown.
self-care, because self-care really helps you step into who you are. Because if you're taking care of yourself and really listening to your needs and doing what you need to do for yourself, then you're more apt to go after those dreams, and people pleasing kind of loses that attraction when it comes to you or someone else. Because I was a people pleaser for a really long time,
Yeah,
and
I think, yeah, go ahead.
and I know that it didn't serve me. And not just people pleasing, having to have things like the appearance that things were okay,
Yeah.
even when they weren't, inside, I felt like I was dying. So
Mm-hmm.
and it took a long time for me to be comfortable to say, hey, I'm not okay, and I
Yeah.
am depressed and I am this. And I think that's great that you're out there letting people know that it's okay to be where they are and really experience the joys that they want to in life, and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, I think you touched on an important thing there. I think that, like, being, aware of yourself, like the self-care, I think people pleasing can be an identity issue or a lack of self-awareness, because you're right. If you are in touch with those things about yourself, I think you are much less likely to outsource that onto somebody else, right? Like, put your ability to be okay onto what somebody else thinks, if you have this big rich inner life within you and you actually know who you are. So I think a lot of it is probably an identity issue, and maybe not knowing ourselves as well as we should, and self-awareness and things like that. Like, it's interesting. The roots of it are pretty complex, but pretty interesting.
But you'd be surprised at how many people identify who they are by what they are in their relationship.
Or
So
their
a lot
job,
of
and
times when those relationships ends,
they don't know who they
they're
are. Yeah.
no, they really
Mhm.
don't, because they place their love and what their expectations of good and what life is supposed to be based on what's going on in their relationship and their circle. So when those things fall apart, they're left to start again. So and they feel and those are probably the women that you'll be helping, that say, I'm 50, or I'm 40, and I've been people pleasing my whole life, and now I don't know where to start again. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I'm starting to look at a lot of things that I personally didn't look at. I think it's a growing
Oh,
process. I
yeah.
think that when you look back on your life, you want to be able, and you're self-actualizing, you want to be able to say, I did my best, I lived a good life, a full life. And as you get older, those things are more appealing to you,
Yeah.
than physical, or monetary, to feel like you had a purpose, and you did live your purpose. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. If you look back on your life, you don't want to think you didn't, like, you lived it for somebody else. And I've came to learn that a lot of people seem to be, I think it's changing in our society, which is good. But I think people are kind of uncomfortable. Maybe it goes with the fear of the unknown, in sort of embracing their intuition. Like, I have a sense I should do this, but it doesn't seem logical, or it seems this or that. And I'm not sure why. I've always been more comfortable, I guess, for lack of a better word, sort of embracing my intuition. If I have a knowing about something, it doesn't really matter to me too much if people think it's kind of weird, because I figure, well, if it plays out, and they see that the right ones stay and the wrong ones kind of fall away type thing, they're either going to see that it did work out, and maybe it can be an inspiration to somebody else to sort of embrace that more. And if it doesn't work, I think sometimes you just have to be willing to fail forward and at least try it, right? And I think there's a tendency to not want to try things in case we fail, or embrace our intuition in case we're wrong. And I think the key is to just sort of explore that out more. And I think there's a fear of that.
I definitely agree with you. I know that my personal fear wasn't failing. Anytime anything really good happens in my life, it was usually surrounded by a failure. No, not like a
Yeah.
failure, but like something tragic occurred afterwards. So
Yeah.
for, like, let's say I got a big promotion, I'd get home and find out somebody died, or just
Hmm.
like anything good. So like whenever something was going really good in my life, I almost expected tragedy.
That's
So
interesting.
it,
Yeah.
it's not fear that of failure that I was like, I had a problem with. It was really succeeding and then having thing, and it kept me stuck for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what I was doing. It was like I would
Yeah.
sabotage when things were going good, because I was expecting them to turn. And a lot of times when it did turn, it was my own doing. So you have to take ownership of that too. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying it's growth. And even coming online, I'm someone that's always behind the scenes. So um
Yeah.
and that's who I am. Like as a nurse, I'm that bedside nurse. I like being there, no matter what role I'm in, I like being with patients, and I don't need to be seen and showy, and stuff like that. So coming online, that was very new to me,
Yeah.
and being upfront and in personal. And it took me a while to really, come out and get past that and start talking to people, and saying, all right, I just got to do this, because that,
Yeah.
and it was fear, and being a woman and having so many other people out there talking about what I'm talking about, and then saying, well, who's going to listen to me? There's a million people out there. Then you have to say, well, why not me, right? So I get that,
Yeah.
but you definitely stepped out of your comfort zone,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
well, we did, and we have to, you
Yeah.
know, comfort, I was recently faced with something. I was offered a very high position, and I'm very, I'm the cat's meow where I am. You know what I mean? Everybody loves me, and nobody tells me what to do. I'm my own boss. I do what I want when I want. So um, this position, it would be like really starting again somewhere
Okay.
else, and and it's out of my comfort zone, but it would be really good for me and my family. So
Yeah.
and I'm not even sure I'm gonna like it, or it's aligned with where I am at this time, but it's something I have to think about, am I
Yeah,
staying where I'm at because it's my comfort zone and I'm afraid, or because I really don't like that? So sometimes you can really trick yourself,
yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm listening to my intuition, and sometimes it's I notice that when I don't hone into my intuition, and I'm really amazed at, some people, because we have a lot of people that were in the book with us, like Megan, who's very, very into her intuition, and she really just
mhm,
follows it all the time, and she
yeah,
shows other people how to do that. And some people really say, oh, you get those feelings,
yes, yeah,
and you're like, I don't know, this feels a little off. Should I do that? And then you want to kick yourself in the ass, because when you don't follow it, it's exactly what you really should have
yeah.
done. So how do you stay true to that? Because you said you follow your intuition, and I don't always. I think now I'm better at it, at really listening to that voice. So how do you stay so passionate and true to that voice?
It's a hard question to answer. I was in the typology community online for quite a while before I got out of it, and maybe personality type has something to do with it. But I think that it again, it just kind of goes back to spending enough time with yourself to actually know yourself, and just having that inner part of yourself, and knowing what your ethics are, knowing what your values are compared to what society might say they are or whatever. And if you know what they are, and then something else is outside of yourself coming against that, you can sort of weigh that against what you actually know inside. This is my value, these are my ethics, and this is off compared to what I really am. And I think that's probably the best way to sort of describe it. And yeah, that's probably what I would say. It's easier, I think, to embrace a knowing or an intuition when you just really know those things about yourself. And always, I would say, maybe every couple of years, sort of reevaluating, what are my values? Are they still the same? Have they changed? Can I add to my values? And really even writing it out, like, what ethically do I think on this and this? What are my values about this and this? And I think that makes it easier to say, I'm going to go this way as opposed to this way, when people are sort of having that opposition come against you.
That's probably the best definition I heard. That really, that's a very nice way of explaining it, and really listening to your core beliefs and values. That's great. So if
Yeah,
you could tell the audience anything about yourself and what your goals are for you really helping them, what would you say? It could be anything. It doesn't have to be about what I just said. What message would you like to send to women out there?
I would say that if people are struggling with social anxiety in particular, and but they have like this feeling inside them, or this knowing inside them, that they're meant to do something someday, and they just look at themselves currently, and then they look at, or they sort of assess the knowing. They're like, how on earth would I get to that? Because all I do is bring the awkward, or I bring this, and I don't know. I would just say, to, even if it sounds crazy to yourself that you have this knowing, because I had that 10 years ago, and I had no way to really think that it was logical or real or anything. And I think that's the thing about intuition. It's often not logical in the here and now. It's like a glimpse of the future type thing that you sort of have to embrace, right? And it would be easy for me to say, well, why would I ever do something significant someday? Because at the time I was chronically ill, I was very socially backward, and all of these things. But I think it's just embracing that and realizing that you will bring the awkward for a while if you step out. And it's almost like you have to expect that, and you have to expect even the reaction of other people, because if you're not acting a certain way, people are probably going to look at you a certain way in return until you get used to it. And I think it's just it's just starting. Even if it's awkward, I think it's just moving forward. That's what I would say about that. And with the people pleasing, I would just probably just reiterate what we've already talked about, which is, if you look back on your life, you want to think of it that, I stepped into what I felt that I was supposed to do, like my purpose, rather than, you know, the purpose that my mother thought I should do, or my aunt or my brother or whatever, or society. And I think, again, it just goes back to spending time with yourself and just writing these things down. What do I really want, and really getting to know yourself. And I think that makes it a lot easier to sort of say, okay, well, if you really respect me, you're going to respect that I do this. And just, again, it's risk and it's a chance, because if you go against what people want, there is a chance that they're not going to respect you for a while. But I think the right ones in the long term, they do respect you more. Right. So that's probably what I would say.
I would think so, and I love what you said. And I think that it's a wonderful thing you're doing, because there are a lot of people that really do have that knowing, and they really don't have that support or the
Yeah.
ability to really step into what they want to do now. So there is that awkwardness of how do I do this? I think anything new that you
Yeah.
start comes with a challenge and that phase of awkward. So I would tell them to do it anyway. Do it
Yeah.
anyway. If it feels uncomfortable, do it anyway. But
One,
we only really get one chance at this life, and
yeah.
you may as
One
well.
of my, sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry, baby, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of my mentors, Joyce Meyer, she always just says, do it afraid. She tells this story about this lady that was consumed by fear. Like, she wouldn't go out at night. She wouldn't drive at night. She wouldn't do all of these things. And she was talking to this other lady, and she was like, I just wish I could do all of these things, but I'm just waiting for the fear to go away. Right. And the other one looked at her and said, well, why don't you just do it afraid? And I think that's what we got to realize, is that fear doesn't really go away. Like, if we don't take action, like, we can't really wait for it to go away. And I think that's the mentality that a lot of people have, like, well, when this fear goes away, then I'll act. But usually it doesn't until we take a step forward. It's sort of like, not, we can't drive a parked car. It's kind of the same thing. It's just, it's activated when we're active too. That's
Yeah,
the
we
thing
got to
with
work through it.
society. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to close out the meeting. I want to thank you for coming and share. You're going to hang out with me for a minute, and we're going to say goodbye to these lovely people. Guys, this is Melanie Douglas, and I'm going to pop her link. And where's your Facebook page that they could reach you?
It's just under my name. I'm not sure the exact link at the moment, but
Okay, well, that's the one that I have, so I'll give
yeah,
it to them. It's
I just
okay.
have the one. So
It's okay.
yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was Melanie Douglas, changing women one step at a time, helping women everywhere. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Stop live stream.